Mesmo, sem mais demoras, convido-vos a ouvirmos as novidades deste Programa Europa Criativa 2021-2027, que nos vão ser transmitidos pela Comissão Europeia. Desde já, a primeira convidada a intervir nesta sessão é Lúcia Recalde, chefe da Unidade de Programas de Apoio à Indústria Audiovisual e Média da Direção-Geral de Redes de Comunicação, Conteúdo e Tecnologias da Comissão Europeia, a quem vou passar desde já a palavra.
Bom dia.
Muito bom dia.
Queria agradecer à presidência portuguesa pela excelente e oportuna organização deste evento. Lamento não poder estar presente convosco hoje no maravilhoso Mosteiro dos Jerônimos. And I will stop here if you don't mind. With the Portuguese, my Portuguese is a bit limited, but I really deeply regret. I think I can speak on behalf of Barbara, not being able to be with you today. But we are on Sol, not only virtually, but we are really together with you. So we have prepared together some slides, some presentations to guide you through the most important novelties of the Creative Europe program today. I will start guiding you through the media strand and through the cross-sectorial strand. But the first message that I would like to convey to you is this is one single program where the culture part, the media part, and the cross-sectorial part is a joint endeavor done by the two DGs. So you will see two faces, but you will hear one voice speaking jointly about the two programs. So we'll start with the media part, if you allow me. And I would like first, this should have been, and it still is, a moment of celebrations. Celebrations of the 30 years of existence of the media program, 30 years now. And I think the most important achievement of the media program so far has been really the creation of a European community of creators, producers, distributors, festival organizers, and cinema exhibitors that are willing to collaborate and work across linguistic and European borders. And this community is possibly the most important asset of the media program, and I would like, first of all, to salute all the efforts you have made during the crisis, because you have gone really through a lot, and you have shown a resilience that is really an inventiveness to reinvent yourself that is really impressive. So I think we cannot start looking forward without acknowledging, on the one side, the success of the programs, but also all the efforts you have made in this difficult COVID period. And I think it's here when we have to start looking at the new Creative Europe program. The co-legislators told us, I cannot see the slides in my screen, so sorry, I don't see if you can see it on site, the slides that we shared. But if I guide you through the slides, the most important message that we got from the co-legislators is this is a very successful program. That is a program that really had to bring about the biggest European added value. So I think that will be the starting point to look at the novelties and the changes of the programs. For all the program will be in the assets. This is a very successful program. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. It will be really absurd. Oh, sorry. It seems that I was the one that had to share the screen. Sorry for this. I was not clear to me, so I hope now you can all see it. Apologies, these are the hiccups of the digital world. So here it is. These are elements that are common to the whole Creative Europe. So really the focus, a strong focus on the collaboration. Again, sorry for this. And I'm sharing now. So first element of big added value is the collaboration. Collaboration across the whole value chain in the case of the audiovisual industry, but also across countries. And for the media strand, we have made a very special effort to broaden the participation of the program to all countries, because all European countries, all EU27 countries should be able to benefit, participate, and collaborate of this reinvigorated program. So we are extremely happy that there is now this strengthened dimension of what was called in our jargon the level playing field, but that will foster new types of collaboration and even cater for the very specific needs of applicants coming from the so-called low capacity countries. A second very important dimension of European added value is the focus on innovation. This is something that has been highlighted by both Commissioner Gabriel and Commissioner Breton. It was already implicit, it was there in the previous program, but with the crisis, this dimension of innovation has become even more important than in the past. And we really would like to use the program to really foster innovation when it comes to new business models, new models of collaboration, new kinds of innovative content, because it is only through this innovation that we will be able to really face the growing competition coming from outside Europe, and also be able to connect with new and younger audiences that also are looking for new ways of engagement. And another important dimension when it comes to especially the media strand of the program is this scaling up. This really, we think that is very important to preserve the creative autonomy of our independent production and distribution companies, and we need to help those companies to grow, to be stronger, and to be more resilient. So that's an element also that will be present, and collaboration will also be a very important way to help the companies scale and gain that scale. So let me now move to the next slide. There are a number of important priorities, and I'm sure that Barbara will come back to that, that are cross-cutting. We call it the cross-cutting priorities for the whole Creative Europe program. This is, on the one side, the diversity and inclusiveness and gender balance component, and on the other side, the greening and sustainability. And let me say a few words about it. So we are taking these two priorities very, very seriously, and we will follow a gradual incremental approach. When it comes to the media strand of the program, we are already in 2021 asking companies and beneficiaries to tell us how they intend to really address those elements. So we are not asking in a kind of one-size-fits-all approach, this is the way to go. We have a very listening ear, and we want to know what the companies and the beneficiaries are already doing in those elements. This will allow us to gather good practices, distribute those practices, and identify better the actions that are already being implemented. I'm speaking about greening, about diversity, sorry. When it comes to greening, again, we'll follow a gradual incremental approach, because the Commission, as you are all aware, has adopted a very, very important greening strategy. So we have to walk the talk with Creative Europe. We cannot stay aside and say, this is not for us. This is also for us. But we will implement these priorities in dialogue with the industry, so that there is not a kind of disruption that is brought about by the introduction of this priority. So we will do it in dialogue with the industry, highlighting good practices, and through a system of incentives. And respect editorial independence. This is very important for the news media aspect, especially, that I will speak about it in a moment. On the administrative improvements, Barbara, I think you will say a few words about it, so I will speed up, because the two of us should be given equal time to have the floor. So now, let me say a few words about the Creative Europe Media Strand. So a huge degree of continuation. One important element is that we will cluster the activities that we have implemented in the past in these three clusters: the content one, supported business environment, and the audiences. So the main novelties when it comes to the actions is in the content cluster that we will support co-development, because co-development is very conducive to co-productions that are at the core of the collaboration effort I've made. We will introduce mini slate development for producers coming from low-capacity countries, and we will also, when it comes to immersive content, we will move from video games and enrich the action with other sorts of immersive content. So on the business cluster in 2022, we'll introduce a new action which is called 360 degrees that will allow to gather in one single application proposals that do at the same time, for example, market activities, training activities, B2B activities all together. It's about blending, bringing together different activities. And on the audience cluster, there are not that many new activities, although we will bring together, or we will expand film education and audience development all together. Films on the Move is an action. We changed the name to an action that you know well, which was called in the past selective distribution. And I will just end up this presentation on media by saying that support to the implementation of the Audiovisual Media Services Directive, it's something that now has been mainstreamed in the program, and from the policy angle will be a very important activity. But beyond the Creative Europe Media Program, there is also the part on the cross-sectorial strand that we will be implementing part of it jointly with Barbara. And I would like to focus the presentation on the cross-sectorial strand on the news media. This is genuinely new, and as Commissioner Breton said, this is a very important activity in the light of recent developments in the continent, but beyond. So for the very first time, and I'm glad to tell you that the first call on journalism partnerships has already been launched. We will promote collaboration also between news media outlets. We are looking for partnerships. These will be very bottom-up partnerships that will actually focus on business models transformation, but also collaboration in terms of content and skills, for instance. And last but certainly not least, we will include a new action under the cross-sectorial strand, which is called Creative Innovation Labs. The name is very self-explanatory. And again, for the first time, we will have a culture strand, a media strand, and a space for all cultural and creative sectors all together to collaborate, to exchange, and to innovate together using fully the potential of new digital technologies or data as well to come up with new models of content and new ways of engaging with the audiences. And I think now is time. I hope I haven't exceeded my time. Muito obrigada, and over to Barbara for the presentation of the Culture Strand.
Muito obrigada. Thank you very much. E agora sim, é tempo de ouvir Barbara Gessler, responsável pelo Subprograma de Cultura na Direção-Geral de Educação, Juventude, Desporto e Cultura da Comissão Europeia.
Hello everyone, muito obrigada per questa introdução. I'm improvising. I'm not Spanish and I'm not Greek, and unfortunately I tried to learn Portuguese, but for me as a German, it's a bit more of a challenge. But I would like to convey my warm regards, of course, also to Lisbon, to all of those who are there in the cloister in this beautiful place. And as Lucia said, we would really like to be there with you and celebrate the launch of our program together, because I know that also in the room there's all of those, or many of those, that have contributed to making this program, or to this program becoming a reality. So in our hearts and souls, as Lucia said, we are there with you, and thanking the Portuguese presidency in particular for allowing this festive moment of Creative Europe's launch today in Lisbon. So thank you very much for that. Lucia has already gone into some of the details about what we want to do, but I'm not quite sure now if you can see my slides. I think I'm sharing my slide, but please confirm by nodding, because at the moment I cannot see that. So what we would like to mention is that, of course, there are novelties in Creative Europe and also under the culture strand, and I will go into detail a little bit later. But we were asked to say mainly also what will be relevant for you also as the community out there, and as both commissioners and the vice president have said, and also, of course, our commissioners have said, there's a lot to be had to help the sector get out of the crisis in this year and the years to come. So we have put a lot of emphasis in the preparation on making the program more accessible, because this is also something that we have heard in the past, that there's very often a perception that it's not so easy to get funding at European level. And of course, it's the opposite that we want to be true, and which is why we have introduced over the past years in preparation, and we will be introducing slowly also over the years to come, various more bureaucratic and administrative tools that will help us, and in particular help you to make the channel the funding to you where it's mostly needed now during the crisis. Some of those aspects in particular for culture that I would like to mention are the necessity that we saw for increased co-funding from the European level, because we were very much aware that not only for small organizations, but for organizations that are based in countries or that are based in regions or in a context where funding is not so easily available, we are trying to make sure that wherever you are and wherever your capacity lies, you will be able to receive the maximum funding from our side. And that is in particular true for our cooperation projects that are following the principle that Lucia has outlined very well of cooperation and partnership across borders. And this is, I think, a very important step towards making Creative Europe a true European program for all of the sectors and for all of the organizations, no matter their size, no matter their geographical origin, that we would like to flag. We are also going into a direction of using lump sums and work packages, which would make it easier for all of you to not only present your applications, but only afterwards as well, when you get selected, when you will be among the lucky ones, you will also have reporting facilities when it comes to showing what you have done. And equally for us, it will be very much easier to reduce bureaucracy and really dedicate ourselves to following the projects in their content, because after all, it's the content that you bring to Europe and that we want to focus on, and of course less the bureaucratic elements. So just as one example, as a few examples in this regard, I wanted to mention those administrative alleviations that we're trying to bring to the program. Now, let me go very quickly into what my commissioner, Maria Gabriel, has already mentioned, which are the novelties of the culture strand. And I'd like to stress in particular that we are now, of course, really making sure that there's an alignment of funding with policy, based on the new European Agenda for Culture that we have together collectively adopted in 2018, which will make it much more easy also for applicants and for projects, for you as the sector, to explain to us how your project will contribute to the principles of policy making at the European level. Lucia has already mentioned the cross-cutting issues that we have also introduced, of course, not only across the board in the program, but also specifically in the culture strand. This is also a novelty which I think will really bring us further, that we will ask all applicants and all those who are thinking and designing their project to think about how they can help us contribute collectively to more inclusiveness, to contributing to the European Green Deal, because these are obviously the generational questions that we are all facing together today, but also, of course, the very relevant question of creating more gender equality and inclusion of people that have lesser possibilities of accessing the program, making sure at the same time that we're not only talking about enlarging the scope in an inclusive way for audiences to be able to access our programs, but also making sure that, for example, people with a handicap can get actively involved in the creative and the aesthetic endeavor of our projects, because they bring so much and they enrich those projects so much that we would really like to make sure that this is being seen and being acknowledged. And then, of course, as our commissioners have said, reinforced synergies will also be at the top of the agenda for the culture strand, and mobility, individual mobility of artists and creative professionals will become a regular horizontal scheme under the culture program. We will continue the successful action of the European platforms, and also there trying to make sure that those that already exist can develop further, and those that will come on board will bring added value. We will continue our actions on the literature and its translation sectorial support. As Commissioner has said, the new element of sectorial support in the book sector will continue also via the support to the circulation of literary works. And we have introduced a new call that will support pan-European cultural entities that will help promote, in particular, young, high-quality artists to see their work staged and be able to work at the European level. We will, of course, continue our very important flagship initiatives of the European Capitals of Culture and reinforce the European Heritage label, to which we owe so much. We will continue adding to the visibility of the sectors by our cultural prizes in the areas of architecture, music, cultural heritage, and literature. And all of this package, we believe, will help us increase really the possibilities for all of you to get support and to become more resilient when it comes to getting out of the crisis that is so much needed. We haven't gone really into the detail of the budget curve for the next program, or for this program, for the next 7 years. But I would like to mention that we will be putting a lot of the money in the years to come. So this money shall be available to you as quickly as possible. We have made our best efforts together with the European Executive Agency that is responsible, continues to be responsible for the implementation of our action, or the majority of our actions, to be launching the calls as quickly as possible, as was possibly possible. And we will be launching the platform calls next week. then we will have all the culture calls launched. So our real concern is that you should be able to get access to European funding, because this increased budget to which all the institutions have contributed is really there for you to profit and to benefit of, and to help you get out of the crisis. I would like to leave it at that, and I'm sending again my regards to Lisbon.